The most anticipated new movie of 2025, titled Ironheart, is making an impressive debut. Since Iron Man's retirement, Marvel has been looking for a worthy successor. And now, is this black girl wearing a mechanical suit the right answer? Through the first 3 episodes of the movie, let's find the answer with Mr.T recap right now. The story takes place a year after the Great War between Wakanda and the Sea King Namor. After parting ways with Susan, Riri decided to return to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Since Iron Man's death, she has always wanted to inherit his legacy, creating an armor that is superior to the Mark series. However, that required a huge amount of funding. After many consecutive failures, the Institute finally lost patience, and Riri was immediately suspended from working there. As for her, she had long since grown tired of MIT's restrictive rules. Luckily, she wasn't left with nothing. The iron suit in front of her was Riri's personal property. Riri's suit also came with a virtual assistant named Trevor. However, compared to Jarvis, Trevor was still quite far away, and it seemed that her movements, or rather this armor, still lacked a lot of flexibility. Very quickly after that, Riri arrived in Chicago. However, her high-quality cocoon armor also reached its limit due to overheating. When Trevor was disconnected, Riri immediately switched to manual control mode. In just a second, under the curious eyes of passers-by, Riri carried a pile of scrap metal back to the house, the place she had left for 5 years. Little did she know that her return would soon be targeted by a criminal gang. The next morning, she went to a repair shop to buy some parts to repair her armor. However, her wallet was empty. As Riri gathered her courage, hoping the shop owner would help her out, a strange man suddenly walked up, pulled out a wad of cash, and paid for her. Riri was puzzled as to why he was helping her. The man said that his boss had admired her for a long time, and when they learned that Riri was returning to Chicago, they intended to invite her to join. He gave her a business card, hoping that she would consider joining their team. Even normal life was becoming difficult at the moment, so after some thought, Riri decided to go to the address on the business card. However, the place before her eyes was just a pizza shop, not looking like an organization at all. Still, she pushed the door open and walked in. As she walked deeper inside, she saw an old elevator. Clearly, there was something hidden inside this pizza shop. Riri pressed the elevator button, but suddenly the elevator shook violently and got stuck in place. Behind the controller was a time bomb, and it seemed like someone was deliberately trying to harm her. A pungent smoke began to spread from the corner of the elevator, and then a man's voice rang out from above. He said that in less than 3 minutes, all the air in the elevator would be replaced with toxic smoke. There was a coding device in the corner, inside of which was a gas mask. Only if the code was successfully deciphered within the allotted time could one retrieve it. Perhaps this was today's entrance exam. However, Riri did not want to follow the beaten path.
Wow, that's kind of clever.
The man in front of her was named Parker. He realized that Riri was not the type of person who would accept mediocrity or let herself be bound by the frameworks of society. However, no matter how nice Parker said it, she still refused the offer. Just as she was about to leave, the other party suddenly took out a box full of cash. As long as she agreed to work for 3 days, all the money would be hers. Riri immediately understood that what Parker was doing was clearly illegal. But this guy insisted that he was only giving the rich people's fare to the poor. As long as she agreed to help, he would sponsor the entire cost of developing her new armor without any conditions. Back home, Riri immediately set to work repairing the armor. Luckily, she now had enough funds, so this task was not too difficult for her. However, her virtual assistant Trevor had been disconnected earlier, so Riri connected to the server interface, preparing to use her own consciousness to create a new artificial intelligence. However, the voltage in the house was too low, and the process would take at least 4 hours to complete. Unable to resist the urge to sleep, she fell asleep. At that time, the image of her childhood friend Natalie kept appearing in her dream. The next morning, Riri heard a voice in her ear.
Riri, tell me wake up.
Natalie? Who the hell else would it be, bitch?
The next morning, Riri heard a voice in her ear. On this side, Parker opened the door to a secret room, but inside, there was only a single clothes hanger. I only saw him carefully hanging a cloak there. So what secret is hidden behind this cloak? Even in the Marvel Universe, one cannot escape prejudice against people of color. As a superhero named Ironheart, Riri was preparing to cooperate with a criminal gang just because of lack of research and development funds. Parker introduces everyone to his target, a company that has built an underground highway exclusively for the rich. This route not only helps them stay away from the poor, but also brings them safety and a more luxurious experience. He thinks this is an inhumane invention. The company's president will hold a press conference tonight. Parker plans to use a computer virus to sabotage the system, causing the highway to temporarily stop operating and thereby forcing the company to make concessions. The task of installing the virus is assigned to Riri, who needs to control the armor to infiltrate the underground highway. But the armor was badly damaged, and many of the delicate parts were not easily available. It was almost impossible to repair it before tonight. Furthermore, she could not accept the fact that her deceased best friend had become an artificial intelligence. However, Natalie next to her had an idea. Through the dark web, she found a man named Azu. Over the past 2 years, he had been buying a lot of machine parts and control chips from the black market, apparently making armor. Maybe he had just what Riri needed. Without hesitation, she quickly took the train to the next city. The man in front of her was named Azu, and although the neighbor's dog left chocolate on his lawn every day, he was only angry but did not dare to say anything. As soon as he turned away, the drawstring bag in his hand fell to the ground. Riri quickly ran over to help. It had been a long time since Azu had felt kindness from someone, so he was completely off guard. But when he learned the purpose of her visit, his expression immediately changed, and he quickly said that he had absolutely no items bought from the black market. But Riri replied that I had not mentioned anything about the black market. Realizing that he had misspoken, Azu reluctantly admitted that all the components he had bought were hidden in a farm in the countryside. Soon, the two drove to an old warehouse. When the identification scanning system confirmed it was successful, Azu pushed the door open and entered. Riri was stunned beyond belief at the sight of what were said to be antique. Azu just said that it was just a personal preference. Very quickly, she found the parts she needed. Time passed quickly, and soon it was already dark. Parker also sent a message, reminding Riri to come to the appointed location as planned. Fortunately, the armor had just been repaired. On this side, the explosives expert was placing a bomb on the ground, while Parker's subordinates had also broken into the control room of the underground highway. At the same time, the female CEO was sitting in the car to perform the final test. Without knowing, Riri had put on her armor and flew into the underground tunnel. After a series of spectacular maneuvers, she quickly determined the CEO's location. But at that moment, Natalie's unexpected appearance made Riri jump out of her skin. Worse still, the hard drive containing the virus had just crashed. While she was at a dead end, the virtual assistant said that he had come up with a solution. Riri immediately flew into the air and silently clung to the undercarriage of the female CEO's car. It turned out that Natalie had discovered a loophole in the system. As soon as this car left the navigation line, it would go offline, and the firewall would be temporarily disabled. If Riri could use that short window of time to let her teammates transmit the virus remotely, the entire system would collapse. But at this point, the car was only 5 kilometers from its final destination. If she didn't want to be crushed, she had to act fast. The armor's arm immediately detached and went under the car. She had to manually unlock the car.
Slug, it's down. Quickly.
Just as the female CEO was still bewildered, Parker suddenly appeared in the car, as if wearing an invisibility cloak. He offered a contract. As long as a huge hush money was paid, everything that happened tonight would be treated as if it never happened. If this was exposed to the public, I'm afraid no one would dare to invest in this project anymore. Left with no other choice, the female CEO had no choice but to sign the contract. The thrilling scene just now made Riri extremely excited. But at that moment, a policeman with a gun in his hand shouted for both of them to raise their hands to surrender. Natalie suddenly stood still as if frozen. She had died from being shot years ago, and the scene before her eyes was so similar to that horrifying memory that it caused her to fall into a state of system error. Just at this moment. Very quickly, Natalie returned to normal. She said that while in the tunnel, the sensors detected an unusual flow of energy. It was coming from Parker's own body, and it seemed not to belong to this world. Apparently, he was hiding a huge secret. The scene shifts to Parker, who appears to be in severe pain. He takes off his jacket, revealing his back, which is covered in veins like a tangle of twig. At this moment, John enters the room, asking Han worriedly, what did Parker pay for, and where did he get this strange power? The next morning, Riri went to Azu's house to continue shaving this material mine. However, she suddenly realized that the name printed on the plastic bag was Obadiah, the villain in the first Iron Man. It was no wonder that Azu had such a huge fortune and was obsessed with bionic armor, even wanting to turn himself into a bionic robot. That made Riri feel a little sympathetic towards him. Back at the pizza shop, last night's operation had brought the group a huge amount of money. At this rate, she would only need to complete 2 to 3 more similar missions to earn enough money to craft a brand new suit of armor. But at that moment, although she was wearing the cloak, she could not gain the ability to become invisible like Parker. On the contrary, she could feel a hot energy radiating from within the cloak. However, just a moment of regret.
Now.
Do not touch the damn hood!
Seeing the tense situation, Parker immediately stepped in to mediate. Immediately after, he announced to everyone the next target, a man named Hunter, CEO of Helium Corporation. They use genetic technology to breed seeds, thereby exploiting farmers cruelly. Besides, the security system of this company is extremely strict. Any metal or heat source would set off an alarm, making Riri's armor nearly useless for this mission. After the crowd dispersed, she went to Parker alone to ask about his cloak. Why could it make people invisible? Such technology, outside of Wakanda, absolutely could not fall into the hands of a normal person. However, Parker only said that it was magic. Seeing that he did not want to tell the truth, Riri left in disappointment. When she returned home, she found 2 police officers standing at the door, asking her something. It turned out that a computer expert named Clark had been murdered in his own home. However, the surveillance cameras around the area did not record any such perpetrator. She immediately felt a chill. Clark was once a member of Parker's group, and it was because she joined that he was left out. This person's death was most likely related to Parker. His power comes from that mysterious cloak. If he can figure out how the invisibility works, maybe Riri will find a way to deal with him. At that moment, Parker sent a message saying that the next mission will start tonight. A daring plan came to her mind. That night, she piloted the armor to fly above the Helium Corporation headquarters. After scanning the entire area, Riri quickly discovered the weakest point of defense. With the hackers' help, the surveillance system was temporarily disabled. She took the opportunity to fly to the lighthouse, then overloaded the power, plunging the entire area into darkness. The rest of the group quickly landed under the cover of darkness. The group had stealthily infiltrated the Helium Corporation's seed area, where their most valuable assets were stored. At the same time, the armor was standing on the lighthouse, observing the whole scene. But in fact, Riri had used a decoy. She gave control of the armor to Natalie. As for himself, he quietly jumped into the water, then silently swam through the underground pipe, sneaking into the company without anyone knowing. Elsewhere, Hunter was still meticulously taking care of the plants in his greenhouse. Both of them seemed to have forgotten about it.
You're there. Apologies. I let myself in.
Hunter presented a check for a huge amount of money, hoping Parker would forgive him. However, Parker said that this was not about money, but forced Hunter to sign the agreement in his hand. At the same time, Riri also quietly broke into the greenhouse. Seeing the two struggling, she silently aimed a laser at Parker's cloak. However, just a few seconds later, the thermal monitoring system almost went off due to the sudden increase in temperature. When Hunter refused to sign, Parker immediately ordered the hacker to turn off the company's entire fire alarm system. He then ordered his men to pour gasoline over the seed area, wanting to destroy everything Hunter had created. In the chaos, Riri immediately found an opportunity, once again aiming the laser at Cloak.
Almost there. Shit.
The alarm immediately sounded at the scene. The defense system activated in a flash, as CO2 began to be pumped into all the rooms. If they didn't leave immediately, everyone would quickly suffocate. Just when it seemed like they had won, Hunter pulled out his gun. Riri was surprised to find that she had successfully cut off a corner of her cloak. At this moment, the security team also arrived after hearing the alarm. However, against a person with the ability to turn invisible, they had absolutely no chance of winning. Riri took the opportunity to open a ventilation, intending to quietly leave this place. But the next second, All exits were blocked. Riri was forced to change direction, running to a seed storage room. However, as soon as she opened the door, she ran into John.
You little...
The difference in power between the two was too great. Riri could only try to hide everywhere. However, as the CO2 concentration increased, it was John with his large body who was the first to feel difficulty breathing in that critical moment.
Okay, I'll get you out of here. Door sealed in 3, 2, 1.
Immediately after that, Riri controlled the armor to other seed chambers, in time to save her dying teammate. When he returned home, Parker immediately fell into a rage. It turned out that he and John were cousins, and the other party was also the only one who knew Parker's secret. He shouted angrily.
What? This is part of the plan? For John to die? Answer me! I'm done with you!
Just then, John's figure suddenly appeared behind Parker. His face was filled with pain, as if he was trying to say the name of the person who killed him. The next second, a silhouette of a mecha appeared clearly in the light. Parker immediately realizes that Riri is the one who killed his cousin. The story continues from the previous episode. After stealing a small piece of Parker's cloak, Riri discovers that she has absolutely no scientific explanation for why he can become invisible. With the help of her mother, the two go to a nearby witch shop. The girl before them was named Zelma, and her mother were both naturally talented mages. It seemed like they sensed an evil energy emanating from the cloth of the cloak. Zelma led everyone into a parallel world. To clarify the material of the cloth, she began to drip unknown liquids on it and threw it against the glass door. After vaguely knowing the true owner of this cloak, Maddie's attitude suddenly changed. She immediately returned to the real world and warned Riri to stay away from that cloak. Its power may come from Dormammu in the Dark Dimension. Realizing the seriousness of the problem, Riri quickly sat in her battle armor. Then she flew straight into the air towards Azu's secret base, with the aim of finding a way to destroy the cloak. But despite the use of extreme heat, complex biochemical design, and even bombs and missiles, the piece of cloth remained untouched. Elsewhere, Azu was reported for trash by someone who didn't know who, because he had purchased a large amount of controlled electronic components on the black market. At this level of severity, he would probably spend the rest of his life in jail. But that night, Azu suddenly heard the sound of the door unlocking. In a daze, he poked his head out and saw the light in the hallway, as if it was guiding him to escape. Under the guidance of the light, Azu finally escaped successfully from prison, and the person who helped him escape was none other than Parker's group. From then on, he also followed the situation and joined his force. No longer bound by morality or law, the first thing Azu wanted to do was to abandon his human body and transform into a robot. As for Parker, he was also ready to take revenge for John. Meanwhile, Riri was still completely unaware. She made an appointment with Zelma at a fast food restaurant to ask for information about Dormammu. But the other party was not Dr. Strange. After all, she only knew that Dormammu's power was unimaginably strong. He agreed to lend Parker his power, perhaps just to borrow his body so he could appear in this world. At the same time, Riri's combat suit was patrolling the roof of a nearby building, but the next second, right after that, Parker's subordinates entered the fast food restaurant. Riri understood that her role in John's death had probably been exposed. However, without the armor, she was just a normal college student. Riri noticed the watch on the ground and immediately came up with a plan. With just a few provocative words, the other party pulled out a gun. She hurriedly left the restaurant. But at that moment, Slug drove a truck straight towards Riri. In a moment of crisis, Natalie in the trunk of the car turned her hand into an electric saw. Luckily, she escaped by a hair's breadth. Now, with Parker chasing her, the important thing at hand was to find a place to hide for temporary refuge. She controlled the armor to fly into the air together, but at that moment, Azu, after shedding his skin, shot out rays from his two hands, while Riri's armor was almost out of energy, not enough to withstand this battle. He understood that Azu's nature was not bad, so she still tried to use words to persuade him to turn around and talk.
Uh-oh.
Azu jumped into the air together and landed next to Riri, then grabbed the armor's two arm. The beam shot out from his palm, quickly paralyzing the armor. Seeing the shadow of Iron Man looming over Riri, Azu seemed to grow even more furious. Although he couldn't personally avenge his father, it was still not a bad thing to kill his successor. He lifted her up in the air, his hands surrounded by lightning.
You need to leave Chicago now. Parker finds out you're still alive, he won't be so forgiving.
Riri struggled to crawl out of the armor, then ran all the way home. Late at night, her mother took her to her father's garage, the place where her dream began. Looking back at her once passionate self, Riri finally regained her spirit. Her mother also helped her find quite a few old parts. But Riri knew clearly that even if she created a completely new suit of armor, she would still be no match for Parker. However, a bold idea flashed through her mind. It was to fight magic with magic. Early the next morning, she invited Zelma to the garage. The biggest problem right now is that the armor's power is not enough to sustain high-intensity battles. So Riri hopes that Zelma can find a way to steal Dormammu's power to power the armor. After all, Ironheart only has one reactor in his chest. Under her tireless efforts day and night, a brand new red armor was finally completed. Meanwhile, Zelma began to arrange the magic formation to prepare to steal Dormammu's power. However, before starting, she still warned Riri that magic comes with a price, and the price is always fierce, but she was determined to play it out. As Zelma formed a seesaw with both hands, a magical power from the magic circle poured into Riri's armor. But the strange thing was that Natalie's body beside her started to flicker continuously. Could this be the price to pay for using magic? Riri hurriedly stepped out of the armor, preparing to back up Natalie's source code. But the next second,
I love you. Riri! Don't stop. I love you, Riri.
Riri hurriedly used her brainwaves with the computer to try to create a new artificial intelligence version of Natalie. But despite trying many times, it was still unsuccessful.
Bring her back. I'll figure it out after I get back home.
Soon, Riri flew to the pizza shop where Azu had been waiting for her. However, she immediately noticed something unusual about the other party. It turned out that Parker had hacked into his system and turned him into a puppet who could only carry out orders. Immediately, the two sides rushed into battle. Riri suddenly thought of a way. Azu's body had been completely transformed into a machine. There was only one place that had not been chained, and that was the weak point of every man. Just hitting that spot hard might cause the system temporarily stop working due to the intense pain.
Yep, clean glove.
Immediately after, she implanted a new system module into the back of Azu's neck, freeing him from control. On the other side, Parker had been waiting for a long time.
You're a criminal, like me.
With the help of magic, Parker could no longer remain invisible in front of Riri. The balance of the battle began to tilt in her favor. But at that moment, Parker's face suddenly became distorted. His consciousness was completely taken over by the demon, and his power increased rapidly. Riri was pinned to the ground by him, unable to move.
Command's emergency protocol.
The iron armor shattered into pieces on the ground, but the explosion did not cause any harm to Parker. He held two guns and walked towards Riri, then immediately strangled her.
Oh,
What the hell?
pretty sweet hologram, right?
When the robot removed the cloak, Parker felt like all his strength was drained. But Riri did not hesitate at all, immediately turning around and leaving that place. But when she stepped out of the elevator, an uninvited guest appeared in the pizza shop. It was the person who had signed a contract with Parker, and also the true owner of the red cloak. With just a wave of his hand, the opponent made Riri escape from her battle armor state. The man said that he admired an outstanding woman like her, but because of her skin color and her humble background, she kept encountering obstacles. If she agreed to sign a contract with him, her future could even surpass Iron Man's. Mephisto then said that he could even bring Natalie back to life and return to Riri's side. Faced with such temptation, what choice will she make? The video summarizes the entire content of my movie Ironheart and ends here. If you find it interesting, don't hesitate to like and subscribe to support Mr. T Recap to grow. And now, goodbye and see you again in the next videos.